Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the NUUC Unitarian Universalist congregation. My name is Laurel Liefert, and I serve as the minister of this congregation of open-minded, big-hearted, creative, wonderful people who make up our community. Today is the beginning of our first service with Black History Month in February. Also, if they have any football fans here, I know that you may be looking forward to the Super Bowl this afternoon. And I am wearing a stole with hearts on it because tomorrow is Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day to all of you. I hope that you have some love in your life that you can celebrate. If we have any visitors with us today, I can't see on the chat who might be with us for the first or second time. But if you would like to receive our materials, would you please put your contact information, at least your email, in the chat, and then you will get our weekly email blasts and also our monthly newsletter, including the February one that is hot off the press. And if you would like a special welcome and you're a visitor, if you want to raise your hand or again, put your name in the chat. And then if you were here in the sanctuary, which soon we hope we will be back here, we would be giving you a warm welcome, showing how happy we are to have you with us with a big round of applause. So is there anyone who would like to have an imaginary round of applause? If so, put your name in the chat. Nobody, so it's all of us old timers. Well, so good to have you with us this morning. So the topic of the service is process theology, called the Bejeweled net. We have up in the balcony our faithful tech crew. So we have Dawn Soriani on the camera and then Sarah Soriani on Zoom. And helping with the service today is our Director of Religious Education and Worship Associate Janen Wright, who is here in person with me. And then also down in Denver, we have our ministerial intern, Claire, who will be doing the Time for All Ages today. And then Ryan Marvel, our new music director, has provided the music that you will hear as part of today's service. So thank you for being with us. Again, happy Valentine's Day. And let me introduce our wonderful team of our annual budget drive co-chairs, Rebecca Williamson and Norma Fox. So take it away.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Rebecca Williamson, and I'm co-chair of the annual budget drive, like Laurel said, with Norma Fox. And I'm going to do a little slide presentation here, I hope. It works. I think it'll work for most everyone. Those of you who are on iPads, you may not be seeing what I think I'm showing, but fingers crossed, we'll make this happen. So let me see if I can make, whoops. So I hope you can all see that that's all of our, that's the theme of our pledge. We're all in this together, even if we can't hold hands right now. And today I want to introduce you to the more whimsical way that Norma and I are going to update you on the progress toward our annual pledge goal of $160,000 in pledges and 100% participation. We are doing the visual representation of our progress toward our pledge and participation goals in this way because, and I'm quoting Norma here, personally, charts and graphs don't float my boat, nor my ducks. So each NUUC pledge unit is represented by one of these little ducks. And each time we get a pledge, one of these plucky ducks will take a dive into the tub together with the other ducks because we are all in this together. At this point in our pledge drive, there are 17 ducks in the tub. That means 17 pledge units, which can be a person or a family, have pledged. And we have raised $38,078 toward our goal of $160,000. So yay, we're doing well. We now can keep the lights and the heat and the water on, and we can fund Cosm Ministries the same as last year. But what about our new interim minister? What about that person's salary? And think of all that Janen does. Don't want to lose her. Or what about our becoming beloved music director's quarter time salary? And of course, our resident jack of all trades, Janet.
Hi, Rebecca. This is Tim. I'm sorry to interrupt you, my friend.
Sure.
We cannot see you changing the slides. The only thing we see on the screen is we're all in this together.
Well, that's at least one good thing. All right, let me back up. Let me back up. And do you have an iPad?
iPhone. Oh, now I'm seeing it
Now we
change and
see it. Now we
you're
see
doing it.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to do it this way then. All right,
Thank
so
you.
there's all of us together. Each pledge will be represented by one of these ducks. And we have 17 pledges for $38,000. And we were kind of right here. So we've got enough now to fund ministries, Cosm Ministries. We've got enough to keep the lights on. We don't have enough to pay the salaries of these absolutely invaluable people. And what about our dreams? What dreams we have for NUUC are definitely going to take some funding. So let's think about that as we think about pledging. And we promised Friar Duck. So he stopped by with his favorite, absolute favorite Winston Churchill quote, which is, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." Norma will put a link to the pledge form in the chat box, or you can find the link in this week's email blast, or you can email Norma or me and we will send you a paper pledge form. So coming up, stay tuned in the coming weeks for more Ducky updates, pledging testimonials, and a dialogue discussing the question, why pledge? This will be between two people who are definitely in this together, Frank and Stein.
So next is the slide.
The audio.
Start video. You haven't.
Whatever.
So there's our update. Laurel, back to you.
Well, I feel like every time I see you or write you, I should say quack, quack. Norma, thank you, Rebecca, and may there be many more ducks soon in our next 2 months as we do our pledge drive for the church year 2023.
All right, good.
Oh.
I can't get it any louder.
Belonging by Rosemary Tromer. And if it's true we are alone together. The way blades of grass are alone but exist as a field. Sometimes I feel it, the green fuse that ignites us, the wild thrum that unites us, the inner hum that reminds us of our shared humanity. Just as 35 billion red blood cells join in one body to become one blood, just as 136,000 notes make up one symphony, alone as we are, our small voices weave into the one big conversation. Our actions are essential to the one infinite story of what it is to be alive. When we feel alone, we belong to the grand communion of those who sometimes feel alone. We are the dust that hopes, the rising of dust, a thrill of dust, the dust that dances in the light with all other dust, the dust that makes the world. Come, let us worship together.
And now please join me in reciting in unison our congregational affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its call. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to speak the truth in love, and to help one another. And our opening song is another special virtual choir production of 4 members of our NUUC choir, directed and assembled by Brian Marvel.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, whoever you are, cause there's no caravan of despair. 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 Cause there's no worshiper, lover of living. Cause no caravan of despair. Cause there's no caravan of despair. Cause there's no caravan of despair. Come yet again, lover of living. Come, come, lover is there. Wanderer, worshiper, lover of living. Cause there's no caravan of despair. Come yet again, lover of living. Cause there's no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
It is so wonderful to see our people's faces. So thank you, Meg and Paul and Marion. And thank you, Steve, for being part of the choir. And a big thank you to you, Ryan, for the time and love it took to put that together. And speaking of love, next is Claire. Let me ask you, Claire, what is love?
Laurel, I was about to ask you the same question. We're going to read this really beautiful brand new book called What is Love by Mac Barnett, illustrated by Carson Ellis. And as I do, I invite you to consider for yourself, what is love, both in relationship to people around you and to this congregation during our pledge drive. The Time for All Ages books for the next month will all be connected to encouraging us to consider all the ways we can give and receive the gifts of this congregation. What is love? What is love? There's a picture of a big, beautiful garden and a grandmother cutting flowers and a cat on the stoop. When I was a boy, in the garden out front of the house where we lived, I asked my grandmother, what is love? And my grandma was old, so I thought she would know. And we see the grandma holding this little boy amongst the flowers. She picked me up in her arms and said, I can't answer that. Who can? I asked. If you go out into the world, you might find an answer. So I went, and we see this boy walking away from the beautiful hills and the grandmother waving goodbye as smoke escapes the chimney. And here we see a fisherman with a giant fish. I asked the fisherman, what is love? The fisherman smiled, love is a fish. A fish, I said. It glimmers and splashes just out of reach. And the day that you catch it, if you know what you're doing, you give it a kiss and throw it back into the sea. And we see the fish plopping back into the water. But I don't like fish, I said. They're slimy and taste bad. They have creepy eyes. The fisherman sighed, you do not understand. I asked the actor, what is love? And the actor smiled, love is applause. And we see an actor with his arms open, probably in Midsummer Night's Dream, with roses being tossed at his feet. Applause. It's the hoots of the crowd, the sound of their hands. You stand in the footlights while they all scream your name. Sometimes they throw flowers. At that moment, you know you exist. You are seen. But the crowd leaves, I said. They go home. The actor sighed, you do not understand. I asked the cat, what is love? The cat smiled. There's a beautiful Siamese cat with bright blue eyes, and the cat says, love is the night. The night? I said. Well, that sounded all right. Before the cat could explain, a dog chased it away. Wait, I said, stop, what is love? And the dog looked back and said, this. And you see the dog chasing the cat with its tongue lolling out of its mouth. Next, we see a house being built. I asked the carpenter, what is love? And the carpenter smiled, love is a house. A house? You hammer and saw and arrange all the planks. It wobbles and creaks, and you alter your plans, but in the end, the thing stands, and you live in it. I said, I'm not allowed to use hammers. Once I busted my thumb. I don't mean a real hammer. I'm not talking about thumbs. We got busted real bad. The carpenter sighed, you do not understand. And we see a beautiful carpenter leaning over some plans with both of her thumbs busted, wrapped in bandages. The farmer told me love is a seed. The soldier told me love is a blade. That soldier told me love is a horse, but the cart driver said, no, it's a donkey. And here we see a whole cavalcade of people holding things that they love. A sports car, a donut, a lizard, a ring, the first snow of winter, a maple in summer, a grizzly bear, this pebble right here. All these things people told me love is. I asked the poet, and here we see a poet with a long beard and an even longer poem, what is love? And the poet smiled. Sit down and I'll tell you, he said. A list so long, it goes on for pages. Well, I didn't have time to listen to that. Wait, said the poet, I've not answered your question. You sure haven't, I said. And there you see the boy walking away. The poet shouted at me, "You do not understand." And so one day, I returned to the house where we lived. And there we see the same picture before, this time with the sun rising in the distance and the boy going back to the tiny home. The lights were on. I smelled dinner cooking. My dog barked gladly at me from a window upstairs. I took off my shoes and stood in the garden. I curled my toes so they dug into the dirt. I sighed. I didn't hear my grandmother come up behind me. "Finally," she said, "you've come back." And we see her smiling in the garden with big flowers and white hair. She was older. I was taller. She asked me, "Did you answer your question?" There we see them snuggling in the garden. Behind them is a night sky with beautiful butterflies. I picked her up in my arms. I smiled. I said, "Yes."
As we take time to share our personal joys and sorrows, you cannot yet, hopefully in the future, but you can't talk yet. And so what I'm asking is for those of you who have a birthday or an anniversary, or again, some other personal joy or sorrow, would you please type it into the chat? And then Claire will read it. And with our old tradition intact, for each of the joys and sorrows, I will transfer a pebble from one bowl to the next, with this blue bowl representing what I think of as the beautiful embrace of our community. And so if any of you would like to share something today, please type it into the chat, and Claire, if you'll read them out loud.
Lenora writes, "My granddaughter and I had a birthday on Friday. She turned 20.
Well, happy birthday to both of you.
Meg writes, "Paul and Meg Nordwall are celebrating the 35th wedding anniversary tomorrow."
Well done. Congratulations, Meg and Paul. Keep up the good work.
Mim continues to have a lot happening with the computer and writes, "I'm overwhelmed right now, mostly about money crises."
Well, good luck, Mim, with your computer and with money, but you have many things in your life that are priceless.
Donna and Curtis write, "We have something exciting to share with you all. We have a new member of our family."
Woohoo! Wow. So Hope Hills, what's the name of your new member?
I'll let you know soon. Tam Paquette writes, "Alex and I are celebrating our wedding anniversary on Valentine's Day too."
Very romantic. So another anniversary. Happy anniversary to you too. Yeah.
I'm showing a picture of the baby right now.
Oh, okay.
Big spotlight.
This is
Aw.
everything.
Other babies, everybody.
Wow. Our wheel of life has given birth to a new member of our community. That is so great.
Yeah. Uh,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And also to Tam and Alex, happy anniversary. And we celebrate the love of all of you who have any kind of love in your life on the Valentine's Day from here, Loveland, the sweetheart city.
Tracy writes, "My old community in Richmond, Virginia lost the first UU, Reverend Jean, suddenly."
Oh, yeah, our hearts go out. Thank you, Tracy. I'm sorry for the loss.
Larissa writes, "Please keep my husband in your thoughts. He's getting a biopsy done later this week."
we will do that. Go well.
Pedro has a joy. I just passed my 1-year work anniversary at the VA.
Already. Good job. Congratulations, Pedro.
Sharon says, today is my mother-in-law's funeral. She passed away last week after suffering from dementia for the past 10 years. My husband is in Peoria and will give the eulogy. Also, her oldest daughter has pancreatic cancer, so a difficult time for all.
Hard times. I'll put in a few doubles to represent the comfort that we are sending.
Marcia Lewis writes, it's our 47th.
So John and Marcia Lewis, happy anniversary.
And that may be all we have today.
Okay, I'll put in a few more to represent the joys and sorrows that some of you who are with us today may have tender in the silent sanctuary of your hearts, and also for the joys and the sorrows beyond our community. And let us send out to everyone who shared that we hear you. We hold those of you who need comfort in the embrace of our community. And we celebrate with those of you who have a joy, and we care for you all. So in our joy and in our sorrow, may we know that we are not alone. Janen and I now will offer you a medley of 7 readings. Consider them a kaleidoscope of images that convey some of the feeling of process theology. So process theology sees the world as a dynamic, ever-changing, interconnected web of life that each moment is filled with creative possibilities. So as we read these, let the images nourish and stimulate your imagination as we breathe together in the mystery and the miracle that is at the heart of our universe, the breathing of the world that some people call God. And as a response to each of the readings, I invite you to sing or say with your mics muted a chant that is by the writer and activist Starhawk. And I'll go ahead and say it or sing it between each one. It goes like this. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. So before we begin, let's take a moment of silence. Just fully arrive here in this moment. Feet on the ground, wherever you are, not worrying about staying on the earth because of gravity. So just breathe comfortably. By the Persian poet Shams Udan Muhammad Hafiz, cloak yourself in 1,000 ways, still shall I know you, my beloved. Veil yourself with every enchantment, and still I shall feel you, presence, most dear, close, and intimate. You gladden the whole earth and make every heart great. You are the breathing of the world. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes.
By American science fiction author Octavia Butler. Create no images of God except the images that God has provided. They are everywhere, in everything. God is change. Seed to tree, rain to river, grubs to bees, bees to swarm, from one many, from many one. Forever uniting, growing, dissolving, forever changing. The universe is God's self-portrait. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes.
By the 15th century Indian mystic, poet, and saint Kabir. I have been thinking about the difference between water and the waves on it. Rising. Water is still water falling back. It is water. Will you give me a hint how to tell them apart? Because someone has made up the word wave, do I have to distinguish it from water? There is a secret one inside us. The planets in all the galaxies pass through their hands like beads. That is a string of beads one should look at with luminous eyes. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes.
By Marjorie Hewlett-Sakochi, author and co-director of the Center of Process Studies at the Claremont School of Theology. We are empowered by a vision of hope that justice is, in fact, the fundamental reality of the universe. Such a vision encourages us to work for justice despite the odds of history. From it, we draw strength for transforming history towards justice. And yet, the call is so great. Economic justice, liberation, renewal of the earth, openness to other religions, and mutual dialogue. How can we as individuals possibly answer the magnitude of the call? We can only be involved in a portion of the world and one aspect of the work, and our effectiveness seems terribly small. Do we simply concentrate on our own task and hope that others will take responsibilities elsewhere? In bits and pieces, will the kingdom come? She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes.
By the American poet and author Conrad Hilberry. Clark Kent slips into a telephone booth, and by the next frame, everything the past gave, the job, the name, the coat and tie, is transformed. Out of those shucks and shells leaps the cape, the great S, the bullets bouncing off on the crooks. Silly and false, this flash of red, yellow, and blue. Nonetheless, we may be changed. Surprise sleeps in the interstices of things. Pushed by an apprehension, 1,000 boys leap from garage roofs, and I myself slide up to a phone booth, fingering my tie. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes.
By American progressive activist and writer Marge Piercy. We seek not rest, but transformation. We are dancing through each other as doorways. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes.
And finally, by American writer J.D. Salinger, all we do our whole lives is to go from one little piece of holy ground to the next. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. Our offering this quarter is splitting the plate with the Loveland Community Kitchen. The kitchen provides meals to those in Loveland who are food insecure. And so we do have a donate button that Sarah's putting up in the chat. You're welcome to use that, but also please know that you can always mail in your donation to the church. And as your generosity flows, we will enjoy Ryan playing a piece by Schumann called The Poet Speaks. Thank you, Ryan. In Namaqua's February newsletter, my column was entitled, "It Matters What We Do." And I mentioned that I'm part of a group of UU ministers taking a 10-month spiritual deepening course called Wellspring. And our session last week was called Reimagining God, about process theology. So this morning, I want to invite you to reimagine God with me, because not only does it matter what we do, it matters what we believe. So I know that God can be a touchy subject for UUs. I believe that what each of us knows about God is a piece of the truth. And you may or may not believe what I believe, but another thing I believe is that one of the important tasks of a religious community like Namaqua is to explore our beliefs and then to live together with love and respect, even if we don't always agree. So, you know, the famous words of Francis David, we don't need to think alike to love alike. I get a kick out of a story that Adlai Stevenson used to tell. It's about a 7-year-old girl who was very earnestly drawing with crayons. And her mom says, "So, honey, what are you drawing?" "God." "Well, my dear, you know that no one really knows what God looks like." "They will when I finish." So I first heard about the process theology God in my first year theology class in seminary. So Rebecca Parker was my professor. And on the day she was explaining process theology, she mentioned something about an organizing principle, but she didn't explain what it was. So I raised my hand and asked, "So what is the organizing principle of process theology?" And I still remember how she stopped and a big smile came on her face. And she said, "The organizing principle is joy." Wow. Do I ever love a theology that has joy as its organizing principle? And then process theology does include a God, but definitely not your ordinary God. One of the founders of process philosophy is a British mathematician and physics professor named Alfred North Whitehead. And he called process theology God the poet of the world. He also described religion as a phenomenon that begins in wonder and ends in wonder, with feelings of awe, reverence, and gratitude that come along with just simply being human. So for me, this just gets better and better. So before I go more into describing the God of process theology, I want to be clear what this God is not. So, and you know, it's interesting that actually we have a long UU tradition of reimagining God. The Universalists, John Murray and Olympia Brown, they reimagined God not as a God of judgment and damnation, but as a God of love and inclusion. And that is the theological root of the notion of universal salvation, that a loving God would not damn his children to live in eternal hell. And so we are in a lineage of heretics that might be challenging and reimagining the dominant notion of God in our time. So some of the dominant concepts of God that process theology challenges, one big one is that the process theology God is not omnipotent. So God does not have complete power to control what happens in the world or what we do. Also, the process theology God is not some perfect, pure spirit that is untouched by change. And this process theology God is not separate from the world, like somewhere up in heaven. So Whitehead wrote this about how to describe the nature of reality. The misconception which has haunted philosophic literature throughout the centuries is the notion of independent existence. There is no such mode of existence. Every entity is only to be understood in terms of the way in which it is interwoven with the rest of the universe. So doesn't that sound like our Unitarian Universalist seventh principle, the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part? So here are some of the ways that process theologians Charles Hartshorne and Rebecca Parker describe the God that process theology does believe in. God is present in every moment and in all things, not just human beings. All of us are parts and partners in a cosmic conversation. The qualities that are constant in God are love and connection. but God is constantly growing and evolving. God receives every experience and changes with every experience. So through our choices and our relationships, we are all co-creators with the divine. We make God as much as God makes us. God's love is a compassionate, embracing love that receives everything. It's an erotic, enticing love that lures us towards wholeness and joy. And the process, God rejoices in our happiness and in our ecstasy. And the process, God anguishes when we are in pain. So this God suffers with us and is beside us in every moment. And the qualities of life that this God values most are zest, enjoyment, exhilaration, and connection. And the kind of influence in this erotic lure that God uses is not power over, but power with. Nurturing and deepening the bonds of kinship that hold us in human community and keep us in right relation with other living beings. So as a poet of the world, God's power is like that of an artist. And there was an article, it was many years ago now, but it was in the UU magazine, UU World, and it was called The Ultimate Canvas by author Gary Kowalski. And he wrote about the post-impressionist artist Georges Seurat, whose artistic style was called pointillism. He was always fascinated by how we see color. And he found out that a spot of pure color on our retina is always accompanied by its complement. So for example, the eye sees a dot of orange and it's rimmed with a halo of blue. The color red, when we perceive it, is ringed by green. Purple is ringed by yellow. And so each of these virtual halos means that each color affects its neighbor. None exists in isolation. So Kowalski writes that if you can imagine Seurat's paintings in motion, that this would be a very good analogy to the mode of the universe of process theology. But the difference is that the units that compose our world are not color and pigment, but they're made up of events. So as Sarah shows you a picture, it's a painting called A Sunday on La Grande Jatte. Listen to this vivid image that Rebecca Parker uses to describe the world of process theology. So imagine this painting in motion. Picture the universe like Indra's net, an image from Hinduism. Indra's net is an interconnected web of countless strands, and at every intersection there is a jewel drop of water that reflects the whole. Process philosophy sees the universe as the plenitude of these jewel drops, each holding the whole in precisely the way the whole is reflected at that point of intersection. Picture this bejeweled net as a spider web covered with dew, each drop of water reflecting the whole. Picture this web lasting only for an instant, then it blips out of existence, and in the next instant it reappears slightly different. And over time, the net appears to be in motion, shimmering or undulating. And these shimmers are people running, tides moving, comets soaring, grass growing, suns burning, rocks eroding. And in the people running, there are emotions flowing, thoughts forming and passing, things remembered, things forgotten. And all of it is the cosmos in an ever-changing pulsation of becoming and ceasing, becoming and ceasing, becoming and ceasing. So this worldview of process theologians, and I do include myself among them, is expansive and relational. Everything living, fluid, and changing, the world constantly unfolding, composed of verbs, not nouns, composed of momentary events, not some solid, enduring substance. She changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. So the she is all of us, co-creating with this process goddess. And we know we're on the right track when we're living with zeal and enthusiasm and zest and recognizing our connection with all that is and leaning into love. And the physicist Albert Einstein agrees, calling our misconception that we are independent a delusion. He calls it even a kind of prison. He wrote that a human being is part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. We experience ourselves, our thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical illusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task, he writes, must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion, widening our circle of concern, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. So listen again to what Einstein beckons us to do. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. So this is the theological basis for all of our UU social justice work. So all of our engagement in anti-racism, anti-oppression is based on this notion that we are all connected, that unless all are free, unless all have enough to eat, unless all have a place to stay, unless we don't see each other, so we don't see each other as other, that we are all part of this process of unfolding, each moment on the crest of the next moment, with the memory and all of the past that has happened behind us, but there is a whole universe of possibilities in each of our choices. Included in the Wellspring materials on process theology was an interview with the singer Bobby McFerrin, a genius at improvisation. And so the interviewer asked him, how do you improvise when you sing? He described that the key is to keep moving forward, whether you're afraid or not, to keep moving forward, living from moment to moment, remembering that life is full of possibilities and that life can be full of surprises. And he described as one way to see the options that each of us face on the crest of this wave of the present, co-creating the future. He said, I can catch an idea, stay with it, and let it develop, or I can let it go and move on to the next thing. There's always another idea waiting, another sound to be discovered and sung. And that reminds me that the process theologian Charles Hartshorne was actually by profession an ornithologist who studied birds. He wrote a book called Born to Sing, an interpretation and world survey of birdsong. And Hartshorne suggests that animals like ourselves appreciate beauty and have an aesthetic impulse. Hartshorne believes that we live in a celebratory universe where many species, not just humans, sing for the joy of singing. There is a divine element within every living being that shares in the chorus of life. And so may we continue singing with zest and enthusiasm, and may we go from one holy moment to the next. One of my very favorite songs is what we'll close with. It's written by Peter Mayer, called Holy Now.
When I was a boy, each week on Sunday we would go to church. pay attention to the priest, that he would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. And when I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad, miracles don't happen still. Now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my fingertips, but now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Child's face, say it's not a testament, that'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come, say it's not a sacrament, I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush and singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now.
The words to extinguish our chalice are by Rainier Maria Rilke. I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. I may not complete this last one, but I give myself to it.
We seek not rest, but transformation. We are dancing through each other as doorways. And all we do our whole lives is to go from one piece of holy ground to the next. The announcements are ones that are also in the email blast that was just sent out and that are sent out every week. Good news is that the memorial service, the celebration of life and remembrance of Barbara Fleming, that I helped officiate a few weeks ago, is now in video form, actually 2 formats on the website. So for those of you who weren't able to come in person and who would like to remember Barbara, it was a beautiful service, and you can see it on the links that are provided on the website. Also this afternoon, a group of us are starting to do some exploration of theology. Building our own theology, exploring, will be from 1 to 3 this afternoon. We do have a group of people who have their books already and have signed up. If any of you are interested, it is going to be on Zoom. And I do have another copy or 2 of the text. And I think not everyone's going to have done the homework anyway. So maybe email me and let me know if you are interested in joining this exploration. There are also some other really wonderful adult enrichment classes, and the email blast that came out does have a link to the catalog. This Wednesday evening at 6:30, Karen Brock, our own poet, is going to be talking about poetry and helping the people who participate in the women's circle write a little bit of poetry themselves. So if you'd like to join, at this point, it's going to be on Zoom. So it will be on the calendar, the link to get into the Zoom room. And also we have our half plate recipient, the community kitchen. Not only can you donate money, but on February 25th from 4 to 7 p.m., Linda Danforth, who coordinates our volunteers, has put out that we do need some volunteers from Namaqua. It's super fun, I've done it. And the meals are actually provided by Meals on Wheels, so you're not doing cooking. What you're doing is setting up, serving, and then cleaning up after the meal. So let Linda Danforth know if you're interested. And then finally, next week, our upcoming service will be with our ministerial intern, Claire, and our worship associate, Mim Neal. And it will be called Vibrant Matter. And here's the news, is that you may have seen that because of the COVID rate in Larimer County dropping dramatically, it was just a couple weeks ago, it was between 25 and 30%. And Sally Henry, one of our COVID team members, checked on Friday and it was all the way down to 11%. And the board in its last meeting voted that once it drops below 10%, we can start meeting in person again. So it may even be as soon as next Sunday, the 20th, that we'll be able to have another hybrid service where some of you can stay at home, watch it on Zoom, but others can join Claire and Mim in the sanctuary, and then hoping going forward that we'll be able to start meeting in person again. So thank you all for coming today. And Sarah now will have breakout rooms available if you'd like to spend some time chatting in a virtual coffee, not hour, quarter hour. Take care.